Alright, let's play a little game. Imagine you're in charge of a lovely picturesque coastal town. The sun is shining, the gulls are squawking. Everything is just peachy. Then one morning you get a call. A whale has washed up on your pristine beach. A massive 45-foot long, 8-ton sperm whale. And here's the kicker. It's dead. Very, very dead. It's starting to smell like a forgotten gym bag used to transport expired seafood. What do? A. Try to bury it, knowing the tide will just dig it back up. B. Try to tow it out to sea and hope it doesn't float right back. C. Blow it to kingdom come with half a ton of dynamite. If you picked C, congratulations. Or you were an Oregon highway official in 1970. This isn't a hypothetical, folks. This actually happened on November 12th, 1970 in Florence, Oregon. A group of well-meaning but catastrophically misguided men looked at a decomposing whale and thought, you know what that needs? An explosion. This is the story of a plan so breathtakingly absurd, so magnificently flawed, that it has become a gold standard cautionary tale. It's a story about human hubris, the limits of official wisdom, and the glorious, undeniable fact that sometimes the simplest solution is not to detonate a giant sea creature in front of a crowd of spectators. It's a moment in history that proves that reality can be far more ridiculous than any comedy writer could ever dream of. The arrival of the whale was at first a local curiosity. It's not every day a creature of mythic proportions makes your local beach its final resting place. Crowds poured in from Florence and beyond. Old news footage, families arriving, close-ups, kids pointing at the giant carcass. A somber, fascinating spectacle, raw ocean power. For a day or two it felt like a natural wonder. Newspaper headlines and a new, temporary and pungent old landmark. But fascination quickly gave way to frustration. A dead whale doesn't age. It should age gracefully. It decomposes. And the smell. Oh, the smell. Residents started complaining. The stench blanketed the area. And the whale became a public nuisance, an 8-ton rotting health hazard, pressure mounted. Do something. Anything. Phones at the highway division rang non-stop. Enter George Thornton, the highway engineer tasked with solving the whale problem. Thornton, pointing at his diagram, explaining the plan. He had no manual. He consulted the Navy. The Navy assured him a controlled explosion was viable. The idea blasted into tiny bite-sized pieces. Visuals? Crates of dynamite and planning documents. Those pieces would be eaten by seagulls and by crabs and other marine life. So the decision was made. Dynamite. Crates of explosives were brought to the beach. It was confident, it was bold, it was definitive, it was catastrophically wrong. Officials touted scientific precision and careful planning. In a now famous television interview, Thornton calmly explained the strategy. He assured the public that the amount, 20 cases or half a ton, was just right. It was enough to do the job, but not so much as to cause collateral damage. He stood there, a picture of 1970s can-do engineering confidence. Hinolo, completely unaware he'd become the star of a hilariously disastrous news clip. The town of Florence was about to get a solution, just not the one anyone expected. Let's be fair for a moment, let's try, just for a second, to put ourselves in George Thornton's steel-toed boots. The man was an engineer, not a marine biologist. His world was one of asphalt, concrete, when faced with an enormous decaying organic mass. He defaulted to his training. The logic from his perspective probably seemed sound. Problem. A large, immovable object. Solution. Apply force to break it into smaller, movable objects. The only tiny difference is that rocks don't have several feet of rubbery, gas-filled blubber designed by nature to withstand immense pressure. The plan was hatched with a certain degree of methodical engineering-style confidence. The team calculated that 20 cases of dynamite would be the absolute minimum needed to properly atomize the carcass. The explosives were to be planted on one side of the whale, the landward side. The theory was that the blast would propel the majority of the whale's remains out. into to the Pacific Ocean, where the fish and tides would do the rest. Any smaller pieces that landed on the beach could be buried. It was, on paper, a two-step plan: blast and then tidy up. It all sounded so clean, so efficient, so American, a triumph of ingenuity over a messy, inconvenient problem. What the brain trust failed to account for was the unique physics of a whale. A whale is not a solid object like a boulder. It is, to be blunt, a giant, blubbery water balloon filled with semi-liquefied organs and trapped gas. Blubber, the thick layer of fat under the skin, is incredibly resilient and elastic. Instead of shattering into neat seagull-friendly morsels, the blubber acted more like a giant organic trampoline, and the force of the explosion didn't disintegrate the whale. It used the whale's own body as a cannon, launching massive unvaporized chunks of flesh and fat in every direction with astonishing force. The planners had fundamentally misunderstood the material they were working with. This oversight is the heart of the comedy and the tragedy of the whole affair. They treated a biological entity like an inanimate object. The news reports from the time capture this misplaced confidence perfectly. And the reporter, Paul Linman, stands on the beach, soberly explaining the engineering principles at play, lending an air of finer scientific normality of legitimacy to the whole mad enterprise. No one, it seems, thought to ask a crucial question. Has anyone ever tried to blow up a whale before? And if so, how did that go for them? The answer, they would find out, was not to budget Kelit. As Teretitas said, the day of the great detonation arrived. An atmosphere of bizarre festive anticipation settled over Florence. This wasn't just a public works project anymore. It was an event, a spectacle. The media was there in full force. Most notably, a news crew from K2 TV in Portland, led by Paul Linman, and the looming silent form of the whale, now started with cases of dynamite. Linman's deadpan voiceover set the stage, explaining the logic of the blast with straight-faced Cold War seriousness. The tension was palpable, a mix of morbid curiosity. The final preparations were made. The crowd was pushed back one last time. From his vantage point, Paul Linman signed off his pre-blast report. It will be heard and seen for miles around. With the blast that will get rid of the whale will be heard and seen for miles around. The countdown began. The plunger was ready. For a split second, there was silence, and then a thunderous boom echoed across the beach. A geyser of sand, smoke, and yes, whale erupted into the sky. It was a powerful concussive blast, just as promised. The crowd cheered, thinking they had just witnessed a successful demolition, but their cheers quickly died in their throats as they looked up and realized something was terribly wrong. The whale hadn't vaporized. Some were the size of a coffee table, others were as big as a car tire, and they weren't flying out to sea as planned. The air was suddenly thick with the sound of wet, heavy thuds as hunks of rotting cetacean rained from the sky. But the real damage was happening in the parking lot. One particularly enormous piece of blubber, described as being the size of a car hood, soared through the air and landed directly on the roof of a brand new Oldsmobile. The car, which a local man had just purchased during get a whale of a deal promotion at a nearby dealership, you cannot make this up, was instantly crushed. Other cars were pelted with smaller, though no less disgusting, pieces of flying whale. The entire area was suddenly coated in a foul-smelling film of blood and oil. The beach, far from being cleared, was now littered with even more whale parts than before, only now they were spread over a much wider area. The main part of the carcass remained stubbornly on the beach. Mangled, smoking testament to the failure of the plan. The seagulls, which were supposed to be the cleanup crew, were nowhere to be seen. Cleanup crews arrived with shovels and bulldozers. They set about scraping and burying the widely distributed remains. Officials showed quiet embarrassment. George Thornton, when interviewed after the fact, admitted that the project hadn't gone exactly as planned. The story quickly became a source local law a punchline for anyone who had ever questioned the wisdom of government bureaucracy. The failure was total and absolute. The plan had failed to destroy the whale. For years, the story of the exploding whale was local Oregon folklore. The original cartoon news report, Paul Lindman's narration and the jaw-dropping blast footage, was digitized and uploaded. It became one of the internet's first truly viral videos. A new generation discovered the story. Humor columnist Dave Barry wrote a wildly popular 1990 column cementing the story in pop culture. Suddenly, the Florence whale explosion went global, a symbol of a plan gone horribly wrong. If you enjoyed this, subscribe, subscribe and tell us your favorite "this is going to be a disaster" story in the comments. Many think the exploding whale is a myth. Tell us in the comments if you've had to convince someone a crazy historical event really happened. On one hand, it's straight comedy. A perfect example of Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will go wrong, now taught in some management and engineering courses as a case study in poor planning and unintended consequences. The humor is what makes the lesson memorable. The city of Florence, once the site of this epic blunder, now commemorates the event with a certain wry pride. It's a reminder that authority figures can make spectacularly bad decisions. For officials, learn public relations and crisis management. If you want more strange slices of history like this, subscribe and hit the bell, and tell us what you'd have done with the whale. The tale also serves as a benchmark for bad ideas. It's a reminder that the most dramatic solution is rarely the best. It's a cultural touchstone, a perfect storm of bad science, good intentions, and spectacular failure. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of all, to never lose our ability to look back at our own past mistakes, shake our heads, and have a good long laugh. A 10-minute story. Every day, a new pill of curiosity.